Welcome to the third session in the series for Med Instead of Meds, and welcome back if this isn't your first time joining us. I'm Wendy Wood, and with me is my colleague,
Andrea Nicolai.
and we're with IFAS Extension. Glad to be back. And without further ado, we're going to jump right in to swap your fats and snack on nuts and seeds. And of course, we are an equal opportunity institution. And if many of you are familiar with our Injustice for All posters, so if you have any complaints, is more information on that poster that we could provide to you as well. So we've been looking at the med way of eating and what that looks like. And if you attended the first session, Andrea and Hillary shared that eating the Mediterranean diet can really fit into any flavor profile, whether it be Greek, Italian, Mexican. And what that includes is eating tons of fruits and veggies. So I want you guys to think about variety, different colors, textures, shapes, and even sizes. And this is one of the core parts of eating the med way. And so you want to aim to make all of your grains, if not all of them, most of your grains, whole grains. And you're going to learn more what a whole grain looks like and what that includes in a future session. And so next up, you see the beans and legumes. We talked about proteins last week, and go for plant proteins. These are some of my favorite. Not only are they filling, they fill us with because of the fiber, helps us keep us full longer, and they're super cost effective. Choosing plant proteins over sometimes higher cost meats. Another one is adding fish to your diet, fish and seafood. American Heart Association also recommends, that 2 to 3 times a week. Then we also want to look at eating nuts and seeds as snacks. And we're going to talk more about that today. And you can also add this in to other types of meals. So, which is, again, what we're highlighting today. Then we want to look at, for the med way, you want to incorporate that olive oil for not only cooking, but for other eating needs as well. And remember, this is not just adding more oil to your diet, but it's replacing some of those solid fats like butter with an olive oil. And then eating the med way also means flavoring your foods. There's so much you can do with herbs and spices. Lots of things to do, not only to reduce your salt intake, but really to enhance flavors. And then, of course, drinking red wine in moderation if you do drink. And then also, the med diet is going to promote not only staying active throughout the day, but spending time with friends and family to enjoy your meals. And finally, limiting some of those added sugars. And again, what's so great is our nutrition labels, our nutrition facts labels now have it where you can see what's added and what's natural sugars. So it's really helpful to help you eat the med way. And so, no, you're good. And so next up, we've got the 7 steps. So they're simple, delicious, and satisfying. So, and that's what the Medway is eating. Medway of eating is really all about. I'm a big fan of simple. It uses simple ingredients, simple food prep methods. Today's 2 recipes that we're going to cover are incredibly simple. It's going to include healthier fats, our herbs and spices, as I mentioned, which is going to make it absolutely delish. Even if it's something like the mushroom burgers, you think maybe it wasn't going to be your fave, but give it a try, especially with the different blends of herbs and spices. And of course, it's going to promote foods that are going to help us to stay full, like the whole grains, fruits and veggies, healthy fats, as well as nuts and seeds. So here's your 7 simple steps to eat the med way. I love how it says simple, but it really is. So the way it's broken down is it's broken into change your proteins, swap your fats, eat more fruits and veggies, snack on nuts and seeds, make your grains whole, and rethink your sweets. And today, again, we're focusing on swapping your fats and snacking on nuts and seeds. So simple step 2, swap your fats. And again, as I mentioned before, you want to replace your solid fats. So think butter and margarine. and any other type of oils that are solid at room temperature. And you want to replace those with olive oil. And olive oil can be used not only for cooking, but it also can be used in dressings as well as marinades. And there are endless ways to come up with different types of marinades. Just using a little olive oil, maybe different vinegars. Um, just it's endless. The options are endless. And what you want to aim for is about 4 tablespoons a day, and to stay within your calorie limit or your calorie budget. And if you're not really sure where your calories should be, one really good resource to have that you can look up is, if you've ever heard of My Plate, you can go to myplate.gov and My Plate Plan, or even just Google it, My Plate Plan, and you'll have to enter some personal information, and then you get truly a personalized plan that's going to show you a calorie allowance and then how much you should aim from each of the different food groups. And that's just for anyone with general population. So if you have special dietary needs, that doesn't address that, but it does kind of give you an idea of where you might fall. And then next up, we've got fat-free. Do you guys remember in the 80s, the 90s, that fat-free foods were everywhere? They had every type of fat-free ingredient product all over the market. And there were fat-free soups, there were fat-free snacks and desserts, and fat-free half and half. And at that time, most of the folks were believing that we were eating healthy because that's what we thought we were supposed to be doing. And so what happened was, is we were choosing these fat-free products or low-fat products in place of full-fat counterparts. However, it's a thing of the past, because look what's happened, or what happened during that time. So if you think about during that time when folks were removing the fat, on the next slide, they were replacing it with refined carbohydrates. And so what was happening is that people began replacing, say, olive oil based dressings with fat-free dressings that were higher in sugar and in starch. And then they were also replacing some of the nuts and seeds, which we know have healthy fats, but they were replacing them with pretzels made with white sugar, refined ingredients, and salt. And so as they were removing the fat from our diet, healthy or not, we just turned around and replaced it with a lot of the refined carbohydrates. I know I was guilty of the pretzel. So you can see the fat on the left-hand side, some of that was being replaced, even though it was some good stuff, and replacing it with those refined carbs. So here's the skinny. So here's what we do know for sure about fats, is that replacing fat with refined carbohydrates during the fat-free craze didn't do anything to help decrease our risk for chronic disease. It didn't reduce the prevalence of heart disease, stroke, or type 2 diabetes. However, replacing saturated fat with polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats has definitely, we've seen a positive health benefit from that. And if you think about saturated fat, it's going to come from more of our animal-based products like dairy and meats. Unsaturated fat is going to be typically from our plant-based products, but stay tuned. We're going to be talking more about that, both saturated and unsaturated fats in a moment. But during the fat-free craze, we did think that, again, that eating that low or non-fat food would help decrease our risk for chronic disease and even lower our body weight, but it was not the case. Now, this is one part I really want you to pay close attention in the yellow box, is that there's no safe level of trans fats. So when we think of fats, don't like to call foods good or bad, but trans fats, there is no safe level. So when we think about heart disease, this is one of the things you want to avoid. And now manufacturers are required by law to include any trans fats on their nutrition facts label. However, you knew that was coming. If the trans fat content is 0.5 grams or less, the manufacturer can list 0 grams on the nutrition facts label. So what do you do as consumers? This is where your consumer power comes in. You're going to go take time to read that ingredient label, and you're looking for those trans fats. So if you see partially hydrogenated oils, you're going to opt for a different product. And that's just to make sure you're not consuming those trans fats that can really impact cardiovascular health. So on the next slide, we've got this fat choice continuum. So if you look on the left-hand side, you're going to see those unsaturated fats, some of those healthy fats, and then saturated on the right-hand side, and then trans fat on the far side. So again, those unsaturated fats are generally your plant-based products, seafood. These are going to have health promoting properties, whereas the saturated fat, I think of my great grandma who used to tell me about, don't pour grease down the sink. It clogs the pipes. Well, it's the same thing for us in our arteries. We don't want to clog our own pipes, right? So think of saturated fat and trans fat in that way. And trans fat, even though it can be naturally found in some of our animal products, it's very trace amounts. It's not the trans fat we're super concerned about. And those are the ones that are going to be in more processed foods. So fried, baked goods, anything that a lot of those flaky baked goods and convenience and freezer food. And again, these have been shown to be very harmful to our health. And there's going to be some handouts and some additional links that we'll be able to share with you at the end of the session. So this is a cool slide. So take a minute to check this out. So, all right. So we know we've got our unsaturated fats in the blues, in the blue and green, and then the red saturated fat clogs the pipes. So take a look, find your favorite oil. Where does it fall? Look down at the bottom. I don't know if you guys remember when coconut oil went crazy. It's the highest in saturated fats. So, and that's again, clogging those pipes. So we want to make, it's not a heart healthy oil. So going up to, that's not solid at room temperature. We're going up to the olive oil, canola oil. They've got a great amount of the monounsaturated fats and then our polyunsaturated fats. And olive oil is being held up as a primary oil to consume within the med way of eating. Very high in the unsaturated fat, low in the saturated, but high in unsaturated. One thing with olive oil, super easy to cook with. You can use it as a dressing. It's similar makeup to hazelnut and almond oils, but it's less expensive. And it's, again, very versatile, similar to canola oil. And canola oil, it's very neutral and like flavor wise. And it can also be another great one that's often used in the Mediterranean, but olive oil is the one that's the first choice. And so for some of the other oils that you see on the screen, they can be used in cooking, but the fats that make up that olive oil is just going to be a healthier oil, more positive for our health, and also to be used in the kitchen. Okay. So, and this is interesting stats. Even though there is evidence supporting the benefits of unsaturated fats, those monounsaturated and polyunsaturated, sometimes you might hear them called MUFAs and PUFAs, just for short. But many people still are worried about consuming fats. And we know that with fats, there are higher calorie amounts, but our bodies do need some of that fat to function normally. So before we go into more detail about how to include more olive oil or canola oil into your diet, let's look at some misconceptions, some myths that are out there that might impact how you think about olive oil and canola oil. And I have to say there was one in this group of myths that I have even fell for myself. So if you look at the three there, it's don't cook with olive oil. Most olive oil is fake. Canola oil is deadly. So we're going to break these down a little bit further. And then I'm going to share some tools with you that you can try to verify other claims that you might come across, whether it's from online, friends, family. Sometimes we hear some crazy stuff, but we want to find out what's actually true. So the urban myth number one claims that there is a danger in cooking with olive oil. that the olive oil is going to turn into cancerous components, that you're going to lose all the benefits of olive oil when you heat it. And specific claims were monounsaturated fats aren't heat stable. That was the one that I kind of fell for myself. Heart healthy components in olive oil are damaged by heat. Heat destroys omega-3 fatty acids, and olive oil has a low smoke point. That was another one that that I had heard also. But all of those are actually misleading. They're either misleading or untrue. What you need to know about oils in cooking is that all oils are going to break down when you heat them. It doesn't matter what they're made from. In fact, monounsaturated oils like olive oils are more heat stable than polyunsaturated oils that are often used in cooking, such as like vegetable or corn oils. This was really interesting. Olive oil doesn't contain a lot of the omega-3 fatty acids. That most of the fatty acids in olive oil are omega-9. And so folks that were saying that, oh, it's going to impact the heat on the omega-3 fatty acids in olive oil, obviously that's very misleading. What about the smoke point? So the claim that olive oil has a low smoke point, which is, if you're not familiar with what that is, it's a temperature at which an oil begins to smoke and rapidly break down, but it's untrue. So olive oil smoke point is 392 degrees Fahrenheit. So to provide context, deep frying food is about 350 degrees to 375. So most of us are going to, even if we're stir frying, that high heat is not going to impact that olive oil, especially for just a stir fry. So you can see that olive oil can get really hot before it reaches that smoke point. All that being said, we don't want to overheat any oil, olive or otherwise, just to make, we don't want it to be rancid. But the claim that it's dangerous to heat it is just untrue. And so how do you debunk some of these myths? A great resource that you can use, it's called scienceornot.net. And that's on the next slide, where it's kind of a cool, and again, scienceornot.net. And that's a great place to learn more details about the olive oil claims that we heard today, or any that you may come across.
Sorry, guys, I'm trying to get to the slide, but
no problem. It just got a little delay.
Yeah, again.
No worries. What are some other places that you might have heard about, like debunking some myths? Because I bet you're going to hit some of the resources.
Someone asked if didn't they ban trans fat? Katrina was wondering about that.
Yep. So they're supposed to, I can't remember the exact year that they're supposed to be completely out of the food source. Do you recall, Andrea?
I think it was 2015, so
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute. So, but I encourage you guys to go, like, some of the products you have in your fridge. I know creamer is a big one with not polyunsaturated fats, but are partially hydrogenated oils. Check your labels, because especially if it's something that you consume a lot of, just go and see if there's a different product that you can compare, and maybe ones without partially hydrogenated oils. That would be a better option to go with when it comes to looking at trans fats. So there's that website, scienceornot.net, a great resource for you there. And let's see the next one. Let's go to our next myth that claims most olive oil is fake. Has anybody heard this one? So this one's obviously untrue. The urban myth actually oh, you have heard of that. Okay. So it actually came out when some of the tests on olive oils and this is back in 2008 and 2010. And what the test showed was that food fraud, interesting. And so anyway, so some of the store brand olive oils on the markets were being labeled extra virgin olive oil, even though they didn't meet the actual extra virgin labeling requirements, which were pretty stringent. And so the test never stated that the olive oils were fake or they weren't made from olives, but rather what they tested, the samples, they did not always meet the stringent extra virgin olive oil standards. And that included for taste, aroma, and color, and some of the flavor profiles. They were just overstated. So it really the study didn't find any concern at all about purity, adulteration, safety, substitution, or any concern when they tested the olive oils with respects to being fake. In more recent oil tests on the oils, they've really continued to be very strict on their labeling for extra virgin olive oil. So it's a great one to go to. I'm a big fan of extra virgin olive oil because it's really easy on salads because it's light but flavorful. All right, so the next one is canola oil deadly. And it says, what does Snopes.com say? And they say it's untrue. Also, berkeley-wellness.com. You can find a lot of the urban legends on Snopes.com. Definitely check that out. But what happened was here, it shows that a seed that canola oil was made from is also used to make an industrial lubricant. However, there are tons of industrial lubricants that have a counterpart that falls within this food system, even though the two have nothing to do with one another. So again, just do the research when you hear those claims come up. And again, so you've got Snopes.com and also berkeley-wellness.com for good resources. All right, I think this one's, I'm gonna pass it over to Andrea.
Okay, thank you. I'm really sorry, you guys, about the slides. It's like delay.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Wendy. And so now that we've debunked all these myths, so we can absolutely cook with olive oil. Most olive oil is not fake, and canola oil is absolutely not deadly and is safe to use, which is really nice to know. Okay, so we got that. Check. All right. So some of the other things would be the goal with the Mediterranean way of eating. Recommendations would be to get at least 4 tablespoons of olive oil per day. And so like Wendy said, that would be replacing some solid fats instead of just like adding it on top of things. So then here are just some different ways that you could use olive oil. So one of my favorite ones, and then you're going to get to see today, would be the olive oil toast. So instead of buttering your toast, you put olive oil on it. And so Wendy's going to show you how to do that, which is really cool. Because I thought you just dump olive oil on your toast. And I was like, how's that going to work? And so she'll show you. But and then doing a salad with a vinaigrette and then roasted vegetables, you can use olive oil with those. And then things like sauteed chicken breast and things like that. So just thinking of how you could do it, and then it adds up, throughout the day. And that would be the goal then, is just to get more of that. We just know that the olive oil is really good for us, and that's why we're pushing it so much. There's a lot of oils that, I guess like coconut, that there's some potential maybe pluses, but mostly potential minuses. But olive oil we know is strong, and you're good to go. So that's why we're recommending that one so much. And there's really a lot of benefits to it. So then some like Mediterranean flips would be to cook with oil instead of that solid fat, and dress dishes with salads and with healthy oils. And so those really, the fats, like the olive oil, helps carry the flavor. So you can feel satisfied, but also get flavorful food in your mouth. And replace solid fat with healthy oils, such as in spreads and recipes. And you can do that when you're baking too. And then just some other tips would be, using it when you saute, when you roast, when you sear, and when you bake. So using the olive oil for that, it's your go-to one. So using that, like sauteing things in olive oil instead of butter, or just even making your eggs in the morning, using some olive oil instead. And there's that super tomato soup, and that recipe's on the instead of Med's website. And they saute onions and carrots in olive oil rather than butter. And then there's roasted vegetables and other foods like with olive oil, like the spicy roasted cauliflower is an example of a roasting vegetables in olive oil. And just a tip, you know how we were talking about the smoke point, or that's the point at which the oil starts breaking down. So olive oil, it's about 392, I believe, is the smoke point of that. So then when you're roasting the vegetables, you know, if you could do them like 375 or three, you know, to 392 in the oven, then you'll make sure that even with the extra virgin that you can do that, and that you can cook it safely and keep all the benefits. And then searing food in them and baking using recipes or follow recipe substitutions that can call for healthy oils rather than butter or some other saturated fats. And then there's more ideas. So dress and drizzle with olive oil or other healthy oils. So you can put it on like salads. Like there's a recipe for the summer green bean salad. It has this cherry vinaigrette dressing. That's really good on that one. And then drizzling it on hummus, things like that. Just give it a little bit extra flavor. Pretty good. And so this is something Wendy's going to show you too, but just the nice thing is we can say goodbye to the store-bought salad dressings. You know how there's like a paragraph of ingredients, so really you don't need that many ingredients, and it can be a lot cheaper to make them yourself, and you can customize it to what you like and what your family likes, versus like having to buy multiple ones or things like that. And yeah, less expensive, which is really nice. Now feels like things are just getting expensive. So how could you do that? Well, you can make some Mediterranean dressings that you can keep in your refrigerator, and it's delicious and easy and can be lower cost and healthier. So we got that covered. And you can control the ingredients, right? So we just talked about that, but starting with a jar. So it's really fun to do it in a jar. You could just stir it in a cup, but doing it in a jar or some container and shaking it is just fun, and you can have your kids help with that. So you start with a jar with a screw top lid, you add some acid, add some oil, and you can start with like half acid, half oil. So that acid would be anything like a vinegar or a lemon juice, or you could even use lime juice, and any sort of vinegar. So you could use red wine vinegar, or balsamic vinegar, rice wine vinegar, and so you can customize it and make it, you know, like what you like, I guess. And so starting with half and half, and then you add some seasonings, and then you can shake it, and then you serve. And then it stores in your refrigerator for a few weeks, which is really nice. And then when you just need some dressing, you can whip it out again. And like the Mediterranean dressing recipes, there's a citrus salad dressing. Well, it has only 3 ingredients. So citrus, olive oil, and salt. And then the balsamic Dijon vinaigrette. It's that's one of my favorites. That's really good too. And then there's also more online, like a cumin vinaigrette, which people have really liked that one. There's a chili lime one, Caesar, and a sherry Dijon. And it's really nice. Something cool that I learned is just that mustard. You know how sometimes in salad dressings, I guess if you ever look at recipes, they have a little bit of, you know, the acid, and then they have oil, and then they sometimes have like a small squirt of like mustard, and it really helps like emulsify, helps the oil and vinegar blend together, which is pretty cool. Kind of nice to know like why it's in there if it's not that much, but it also gives flavor, of course. And then flipping the ingredients, so replacing bacon fat with olive oil. So these are dishes that you might usually, someone might say, oh, I made, you know, sauteed squash and onions, and might traditionally be used with bacon fat to give some flavor, but you can make that deliciously also with olive oil. And then we have that olive oil toast, which I love. And then the Mediterranean tuna salad, so they use the olive oil instead of mayonnaise. And there's deviled eggs, you can do the same thing. And there's recipes online for that. Okay, and then something that I get questions about a lot, and I don't know if you guys have the same questions, but you're like, how do I pick an olive oil? There are like 1,000 at the store. So there's 3 key things that you can look for, and that you know then that you got to win. Okay, so number 1 would be a dark bottle or can. So why? So does anyone know why? You guys want to write in the chat? Why do you think you would want a dark bottle or can for your olive oil? Does anyone know? I don't know if anybody's by the computer to do it. Yes, good job. So light, the two things that degrade olive oil would be the oxygen. So it's like if you left it unscrewed and just sitting out, that would degrade it. And then also light. And so if you could get it in a dark bottle, then that would help preserve it longer. And yeah, so dark bottle can help increase the shelf life and protect the oil. So look for a dark one. And then another one would be look for extra virgin. So both of these oils that are on there, there's the pure 100% olive oil and then extra virgin olive oil. Both of those are good options. But if you're only going to choose one olive oil to have in your kitchen, have it be the extra virgin because that's the one with the most benefits. And the olive oil, if it says like pure 100%, it might not have such a strong flavor. So maybe you do prefer that. And sometimes, like, I would use that in baking muffins or something where maybe you don't want a really strong olive oil flavor. But they're both healthy, but that extra virgin is just that first pressed, and that has um, so it has more robust flavors, which is really fun a lot of the times when you're sauteing and stuff like that, and for drizzling and for dressing, and it has the most benefits. So that's extra virgin. It's the highest quality olive oil. So you're getting dark bottle, extra virgin, and then just looking at the best buy date because you want to get one that's as fresh as possible. And then once it's opened, it recommended it be used within 30 to 60 days. So that's, not that long. So that's, it relates to when the olive oil should be opened by. So it's like best by, so try to open it by this time. And then once it's opened, you want to reduce the air to the oil that that affects the shelf life. So, sometimes you might see a really big canister or something of olive oil and you're like, I'm going to get that one. But you just want to make sure that, when it gets like halfway empty, you're going to have a lot of air in that. So it's almost can be better if you just buy smaller bottles and go through it quicker just to keep it really fresh. So those three things are pretty important. So buy olive oil in appropriate size containers that you can use within 30 to 60 days. And then find an olive oil bottle that fits your needs and cooking style and keep it near your prep area, but store it away from that light and heat then because those degraded. So I know we sometimes like, those really pretty jars are usually clear, right? Where you could just drizzle it on. There's a vinegar and an olive oil one. And, so if you use those, try to keep it away from the heat. And then also, if you can get them in smaller containers, so then even if it is transparent, where it's not a dark bottle, it can still be cycling out before it deteriorates at all, and you lose any of the good benefits that it has. And sometimes people say, it can be really expensive. Well, it can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. So you can get good quality olive oil for reasonable prices, which is really nice to know. Finally, something right. Does not have to break your food budget at all. Just remember those three things. Like look for dark bottle, and then extra virgin, and then the sell by date. So looking for one that where you have more time to use it. And then you can just buy whatever one works with your budget. So thinking about those three things, and there's lots of different places you can get olive oil. That's good. So here's just something else about decoding the labels. You might have seen like product of Spain or made in Spain. So the difference is labels, if it says like 100% Spanish, that would mean that the olives in that product are all from that specified country. But if it's a product, if it's made in Spain or product of Spain, means that the olive oil is made and bottled in that country, but the olives could be from different countries. So just if that was something that's important for you, just maybe like, it says made in Spain and that's where it's bottled and stuff, but maybe the olives are from all over. So if you want 100% of a certain kind of olives, then you would look for something that says like 100% Italian or things like that. So, and just, any of these options would be great as long as they have those three things, right? The dark bottle, the sell-by date, and then extra virgin. So you got some fun options. And then you can do tasting and see which olive oil you like the best. The other things we were talking about would be the snacking on the nuts and seeds. So you want to choose at least 3 ounces, so 3 small handfuls of nuts and seeds per week, while keeping within your calorie budget. So it's kind of would be doing something like, instead of snacking on the pretzels now, you could replace those with some nuts, and trying to avoid candied, honey roasted, or heavily salted nuts and seeds. And yeah, there's lots of different flavors with the nuts and seeds, and there's each one has a different benefit. Like almonds have calcium, and then walnuts have those omega-3s. So it's nice, like if you can eat a variety, that can be great. And peanuts even have benefits too. And this is just showing how there are some, like, each one has great benefits. So just, yeah, trying to eat a variety and use them in different ways. So you're like, okay, so other than just handing, like eating them, like how else could I use them, right? So some things like I really like are putting them on things like salads, and then having them as snacks, right? Putting them in oatmeal. And I think there's another slide on that, so I'm getting excited. But aim for 3 ounces of nuts and seeds per week. So here would be an example of like just trying to get even those 3 servings. And 1 ounce is usually about your handful. So it's important to maybe replace other snacks, like maybe you would have cheese and crackers, but go for nuts instead. And here's an example to help you figure out like what an ounce is. So it's kind of cool that almonds, they're, you can remember 1, 2, and 3. So 1 ounce is equal to 23 almonds. So, and it's like about the size that would fit in a baby food jar, 1/4 cup, or if you take one of those square Post-it notes, it's like if you lined up the almonds on it, it would be about 23. That would cover the whole Post-it note. It's kind of a fun thing. Smartphone or a shot glass. So it's like whether you have babies or at your house, or you like to have parties or something like that, you have a measuring device is there with you. And most grocery stores, they have that prepackaged bags of nuts and seeds that are 1 serving, 1 ounce, like, or those 100 calories. But you can make your own bags too. And that can really help just when you want to grab something and run out the door. And I keep some in my bag. Just, sometimes if you get hungry, they're just what you need to help hold you over until you get to a meal again. Okay. And then adding to salads and grains, topping fruits with nuts and seeds, snacking on nuts and seeds. And then tips too. So these would be just some recipes that using the nuts and seeds that you can find online. And like here's another one. It's a cucumber salad, and it has peanuts, and it has mangoes and tomatoes and cucumbers, and it actually has peanuts on top, which is kind of cool. It's fun to try these new flavors. There's a great recipe online for that one. And then just a life hack too. So that would be instead of the protein bars, these things, and cereal bars, swap those for something more wholesome like nuts and seeds. So using that instead. And then since we're talking about nuts and seeds and nut butters, reading the label, right? So trying to choose one with minimal ingredients, because it just needs to have nuts. It could just have nuts. You could have nut salt oil to help it emulsify more, or you might have it with added sugar. So trying to look for these, just trying to find the one that would work best with your daily intakes. Like if you don't usually have a lot of added sugar and you really like the Jif one or one with added sugar, maybe that's your time to enjoy like a little bit added sugar. But you only want to get less than 25 to 36, depending on male or female, grams of sugar a day. So you can kind of look at the label and see where you're at, and if you're already getting a lot of sugar, maybe try to choose one with less. But all the peanut butters, pretty good option. They're usually pretty low. And then mindful eating, so right-sizing your portions. So you guys might have heard things like that, but things about the portion size getting bigger. But it's true. They've increased over the past 20 years and continue to get larger. So eating larger portions at one meal would not be such a problem if we ate less at the next meal over time, but that usually doesn't happen. And research shows that we don't usually compensate for larger meals consumed at one meal by eating less at a smaller one. So just trying to remember that we're kind of distorted with our portions and getting back to what we used to be. So thinking of a normal portion, then a small handful of nuts and seeds is about an ounce. And we can use our hand in a lot of different ways to help us. So the palm of our hand is about the size of 3 ounces of meat, chicken, or fish. A deck of cards, you might have heard also, would be a good way to tell 3 ounces. And so that would be about a serving of a protein then. You can see, I think of like a steakhouse sometimes, like, you just think about your palm of your hand and how many palms could fit on the steak if they give you. So just having that an idea and then maybe taking some home or remembering that when you're serving it at your house. And then 1 ounce of cheese is about the size of your thumb or 2 dice. So that could be something you could also take along with lunch or something like that to help 1 ounce of cheese. And then a fist is about 1 cup. So if you see cereal, like, like fluffy cereals like Cheerios and Kix and things like that, that would be like 1 cup would be like your fist. And it's really good to take bowls at your house and just measure out a portion in them, because then you know about what 1 cup looks like in the bowl, and you only have to do it 1 or 2 times and then but it's just nice to know, because sometimes you can get distorted with the size of the plates. So a bowl of pasta, can be a lot more than 1 cup. And so when you're at home, then you're in control and you can measure it out and see what how much you have. Yes, and so putting reasonable portions on the plates instead of putting serving dishes on the table, that can help in controlling portions. Sometimes when it's right in front of us, we just might tend to keep eating. So that can be one tip. Another tip would be that portioning out the snacks then. Putting definitely, if you're eating in front of the TV or something, portion out, which is not recommended. Eat at the table, right? Okay, so portioning out like the chips into a bowl or the nuts into a bowl, so you don't just mindlessly eat. That can really help control. And then using smaller plates and glasses. There's some really fun experiments and research that have been done with people thinking like if you're using a smaller plate, it just looks like more, even if you know that it's a smaller plate and you know that it's probably gonna look like more, but people still distinguish it as looking, like more, even if they're measuring it out. Just your eyes trick you, so it can be good to use smaller plates sometimes. That can help you control the portion sizes, glasses also. And then Wendy was talking about calories, but this is just a quick snapshot of how many calories you might need per day. And that calories are energy, basically. So it's like if we aren't very active, we would need less energy. So you can kind of see how it can really depend on your physical activity, but also your size and your gender. And so this is just kind of to give you an estimate, but it's nice to know, because then we can look at the calories at foods and see about how much of our calorie allotment it would use. And so there's lots of recipes on the Mediterranean website then, and really good ones. And then here's just some recipes. I'm just gonna flip through these quick, get Wendy some time. So we got olive oil toast. We have the tuna salad with olive oil, cucumber olive oil, sea salt yogurt, pretty good and refreshing. Citrus salad dressing. We have brown rice salad. We have spicy roasted cauliflower, cabbage, pasta, and peppers. Now these are using that olive oil. And then nuts and seeds. We have oatmeal with fruits and nuts. This one's really good. It's good to me now. And then rosemary chili almonds. Made that one a few times too. It's kind of, if you really like the glazed nuts or something else, this would be a fun way to do it with a lot of flavor, so they're just not plain. Really good. And then rosemary chili walnuts. We got that salad with the peanuts, quinoa strawberry salad. That one's really good too. Whole wheat couscous salad that has some citrus and also some nuts. And a simple stir fry with some nuts. And mushroom almond burgers. You know, I'm a fan. And we've convinced Wendy too. And so that's all we have there. So let me stop sharing. And we'll see if we can get Wendy control here.
Of course, our refrigerator decided to kick on right now. So hopefully, can you guys, Andrea, can you hear me decently?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. So Andrea kind of went through, I really wanted to jump on while she was describing it about the citrus dressing. That's what we're going to make first, or make today also. But we're going to start over here on the other cam where you can see, you may have to double click on your screen on the right one to spotlight it. And so all I've done is I've taken a teaspoon here of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, and I was proud. I had my dark colored glass. So we've got I'm only going to make half the recipe, but I've got the olive oil here. I'm going to go ahead and heat that up. See it here? Let's see.
Do you want me to spotlight the stove, Wendy, or
Sure.
which camera?
Way. Yep, that sounds good. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to let that heat up. And how do you know when it's hot enough? You're going to see it start to move around a little bit. I'm going to do my best. I kind of laughed as I was putting that camera a little closer. I thought, well, if I burn it, you'll get a real close-up shot of me burning the toast. Oh, something so simple. So I am using a nonstick pan today, but not quite ready. You can see here it's still not there yet. So let's just give it another minute or two, and I'm just going to use some tongs for the toast. So this is just a great way, an easy way to substitute instead of using butter or margarine and then adding anything else on top. You're just going to use a healthy olive oil. Remember, we're aiming for that 4 tablespoons. So this is one way to do that. Feel it heating up? It's not quite there. All right, well, while that's heating up, I'm going to share a little with you. So I've got, for the citrus dressing, I've got a bowl, just a small bowl. I got an old school juicer. You guys might have the fancy ones where you cut them in half and you flip the lever and squeeze it. That's on my list of things I'd like to buy. And I've got some nice, beautiful lemons, and then a little bit of salt and pepper. So that's to taste, and some olive oil. But I'm going to hold off. But those are the ingredients for this. Let's check on our olive oil over here. I think we're looking pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and add. We're using today. Oh, actually, while I have a chance, I still got a minute or two. So I'm hoping you're going to be able to see this well. That's our nutrition. Let's go this way. Nutrition facts label. So I want to look for, and you're going to learn more about this in the whole grain lesson. But we're looking for whole wheat, and we've got it. And in this one, it's got some protein as well as a little bit of fiber. So, but it's got the sprouted whole grains. So let's go ahead and add that in. I've got my gloves on. So I'm going to use this and just kind of move it around a little bit. And I'm going to let it toast up. While it's toasting, we're going to start with our other dressing. Andrea, if it starts to get a little too toasty, just say the word. So one thing you can do before you actually squeeze the lemon, you could use limes as well. Or, hey, get crazy, go lime and lemon for your dressing. But you can roll it, just roll it like this on a countertop, and it'll kind of loosen up the flesh a little bit. So I'm going to use a chef's knife. Going to hold it properly, and we're going to just cut. Let's see if you can See here, make sure I have the claw. Gonna go straight down and rock. So we've got our 2 halves, and you can see it's nice and squishy. So I'm gonna go straight down, give it a twirl. And now you guys, so this is the good part is that on the other half, you use your other, you're getting a workout. So it's a twofer, a workout and you're getting juice. All right, so we're pretty good there. I better check on the toast. I'm not, but this is close. All right, how are we doing? Not quite there yet. I'll let it get a little toastier. All right, so we've got our lemon juice. I've already done the 6 tablespoons, so we're ready to add that into our bowl here. All right, I got a little pulp in there, which I'm okay with, as long as there's no seeds. And I'm just using some old jelly jars. I think I bought these little reusable lids at a big box store, which you can do. But I will say, don't try to use these to store like grains in your cupboard because they don't keep out the bugs. So great for dressing. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and add our 6 tablespoons of our olive oil into our bowl. So now we've got our mixture. And I'm just going to use a metal whisk. Get it nice and mixed. And I encourage you guys, definitely take a taste of it prior to adding your salt and pepper. I know I just like a pinch, so I'm just going to grab, I've pre-measured a little bit over here, so I'm just going to add a little bit in. And then I'm going to use the toast cam over there to show you a close-up of what it looks like. All right, so you can see it's beautiful, it's fresh, and then I'm going to attempt to put it in the jar. Let's see. Hey, I scored on that one. All right. And the cool part about that is that that's a cute little gift you could share with somebody. Of course, it's not shelf stable. So, all right, you've got a beautiful citrus dressing, can go on top of a variety of different things. I'm going to use this on a salad tonight. Ooh, I hear my toast popping, so let's go check it out. All right. Oh, there we go. Little toast. See, you get the close-up. Now, I'll probably take some of that dark pieces off because we don't want to add any carcinogens into our toast or our mealtime. So, and I've got it on about a medium heat, but you guys have to test it out with your own stove. Again, I can do other things, maybe not quite as long as I did, so I don't. Just say it's so, and there you really have it. So you've got your toast with olive oil instead. Let me make sure I turn off that. And we've got, and I just so fun. So now we've got our delicious toast, a little dressing, not for the toast. How cute is that? That's just what we have for tonight. We've got fun toast, fun dressing, and a fun plate. So, way for you guys to incorporate the Mediterranean diet into your cooking. And that's it. That was a simple recipe. So if you have any questions, feel free to pop those in the chat, and we'd be happy to answer them. Thanks for hanging in there with us tonight. Hope you join us next week, too. Any questions, Patricia?
Let's see. I'm not seeing any specific questions. The Q&A. A question from me here for the dressing that you made. I don't know if you already mentioned this, but how long would that last in like the refrigerator?
Andrea actually addressed it a couple of weeks, she said, but one of the things I know that will happen, obviously it's gonna get a little stiff and separate. So if it's in the jar, that's one thing. You're welcome, Wanda. one thing that you can do, just take it out a little bit early so it has some time to just to settle, to get not to room temperature, but just so you can shake it up again. Mix on it, but definitely needs to be refrigerated.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and you're getting to use citrus.
Perfect.
All right, without any other questions, then we look forward to seeing. We've got some new recipes, and we look forward to having you back. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.